Good morning and welcome to the latest Tree Talk special. Today, myself and Matt are going to be looking back at an incredible All Ireland final as Limerick made it 3 in 4 years. To display the ages, we'll be looking back on the game, where it was won and lost, standout performers, and looking at this Limerick team in a context and where they rank in the all-time greats. So do stay tuned.
The impression the game you get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawty Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
But for anyone that has their opinions, make sure to get them in and we'll be talking through them. But Matt, that clip, we're going to have add a few into it. What was the standout moment from Sunday that you could add into it? For me, it's definitely the Peter Casey shuffle.
Yeah, well, yeah, there are so many moments, but looking at that introductory clip of real highlights, what we got last Sunday, of course, Jack, was 70 minutes of that throughout the field in all areas of the field. Jack, it's absolutely incredible, and I don't know do the players realise, but I'm sure they're back among their communities now, what it has done to lift the communities around the county. Like there's people that I know that I rarely see with a smile on their face going around now with a permanent smile. You know, that there's a pride there in what this group of players have achieved. They have lifted the whole county. They have lifted the communities, even more so than 2018 and 2020. Now, 2020 was in the depths of a pandemic and was facing up to Christmas, and it got lost in all that sort of thing. But people have an opportunity at this time to, to really, really relish it. And it's such an antidote to this ongoing pandemic. And like it was a performance for the ages. And those of us that are around as long as I've been around and have suffered 45 years of being in the wilderness as far as All Irelands are concerned, we just couldn't believe what was unfolding in front of our eyes. It was simply an incredible, incredible performance. 1 to 15, Jack, right from, I suppose, we got a very good first 5 minutes.
Definitely.
Maybe 6 or 7 minutes. Like we got Road at this first goal, and then we had the response from Shane Kingston. But after that, Jack, it was just simply awesome. Like I was in Cork City for the day yesterday, actually, and met a number of people, and the overriding emotion there seemed to be that, disappointed to be beaten, but no shame in being beaten to a team of that caliber, which I think sums it up.
Oh, definitely not. They're a special team. We'll get into that, but just on that opening 5 minutes, I suppose, even the build up to the game, the half an hour beforehand, I suppose we missed out last year. 2018, there's probably a lot of nerves going in as probably outsiders. This year as favourites, probably more nerves, if anything. The parade, everyone mentions this parade, and it was incredible to be back in Croke Park on All Ireland final day.
Absolutely incredible, and the build-up was fantastic, and the atmosphere outside the ground was fantastic, but tense, Jack. Tense for both sides, and I have to admit that I share that tension myself, living here on the border. I had a sense all the time that Cork were really, really going to put it up and were a possible banana skin. Because as I've said a number of times in this cast, I respect Cork hurling and what it has done over the years. And quite honestly, I might say that I'd never have lived to see the day that a Limerick team would put on the type of performance that they put on in Croke Park. I also, at the other end of the spectrum, I never thought I'd see the day that a Cork team would be so comprehensively beaten in an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, and I suppose at the start when Gerard Hegarty scores that goal, you think, right, they're settled in. This could be a long day, the day we got. But Cork's response was emphatic, and you were kind of thinking, if this goes to a shootout, you would nearly fancy Cork.
Yeah, the response was absolutely fantastic, but the response was a classical product of what has brought Cork this far, working the ball smartly through the lines and up to Kingston. And like Shane Kingston had quite a bit of work to do when he got the ball, and like his execution and his finish after that was absolutely first class. There's the doubt in that about that. But after that, Limerick just closed down. They were having no more of that, and they gave Limerick a wake up call. And from a Cork point of view, it was too early to be giving Limerick a wake up call, because they woke up. If there was any doubt about them, they just stamped their authority from there on. And had that goal maybe come halfway through the second half, it might have had a greater impact if the game was close. But by God, after that, look, 318 in the first half, all from play, or was it 317 from play or whatever, would have won 109 of the 139 All-Irelands played to date. So yeah. I think that says it all. And I think I heard, was it in one of the commentaries, that Limerick were worthy of every score of it, which they were. Like, and, when you see the complete team performance and the quality of the goals, and I know we'll be talking about Keane Lynch later, but the complete performance, like when you see Barry Nash coming up just before halftime, left corner back coming up and popping it over the bar, complete performance from a complete team.
Oh, complete performance. And I suppose it showed the strength of this Limerick team, that straight from Kingston's goal, Nicky Quaid finds Peter Casey, who had worked back so far in the field, and probably, I'd say Peter's probably just outside his own 45, inside the 65, turns and strikes over the bar. And it was an indication of just how strong this Limerick team are to respond, and also the form that Peter Casey was in. And it's a real pity when I saw him for the first half, because he was electric.
Absolutely electric. And Limerick were robbed, and the public, the attendance in Croke Park and all those watching in were robbed of one of the game's real stars when Peter Casey went off a most unfortunate injury. And all we can do is wish Peter the very, very best to get back as soon as possible. But he the impact he'd made in the half hour that he was on the game, 5 points from play in an All-Ireland final, Jack. All from play. Like, he was right up there and challenging for man of the match. You could only hazard a guess as to what score or what tally he would have ended up with, because he was all over the place. And he was a pure, as I said, as we said in the preview, he was a pure nuisance to the Cork defence. And we heard all this thing about the Cork defence, and there was a belief that this Cork defence at last, that Cork had defensively got it right, and maybe they had that to a certain degree. The tightening up in the Cork defence was one of the reasons that they found themselves in Croke Park last Sunday. Yeah, I would agree, but right. I don't think Clare provided an adequate challenge to that narrative. Certainly Dublin didn't provide it. And I think Kilkenny, to a certain degree, were all over the shop. I honestly thought, and I didn't realise it until I sat down to write the preview of the semi-final, how moderate a team Kilkenny were. Now it was a landmark victory for Cork in that they had found Kilkenny to be a huge stumbling block for the last number of years, particularly in the latter stages of the championship, and it was a huge thing for them to get over it and to beat Kilkenny. But I honestly think that Cork read probably too much into the victory over Kilkenny. And like, they should have asked themselves the question: 6 points up, we allowed Kilkenny back into it, and Jack, when you go to extra time in any game, you're going into lottery territory. There was no guarantee that they'd have come out of it. Right, Cork have adopted the mental strength that they got over. They got over the line in that one, but on reflection, it was never going to be good enough to beat Limerick. And hindsight is a perfect science. But we did say in the lead up to the championship that we felt that Limerick were at 75-80% against Waterford. They closed the gap to 100, peaked at the very, very right time, just as they did in last year's All-Ireland final. They kept the very best wine for last. And we see what the good wine looks like and what it tastes like.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on them 3 goals.
You
Matt,
drink wine, Jack, do you?
I don't, to be honest. I wouldn't be a wine drinker. I wouldn't be much of a drinker at all. I'd prefer Coca-Cola, to be honest. All my friends will attest to that. I probably drink a bit too much of it. But we had a few beers after the game. I won't lie, which was great. It was great because we missed out in 2020. But just on the goals, Matt, I suppose we got a goal within the first 2 minutes. Do you think Limerick went out to get goals, or the genius that is Cian Lynch just realised in that split second there was a goal on here? Because he takes a little touch before the first goal, Cian Lynch, that probably a lot of people didn't realise that totally opened up the space for Gerard Hegarty. But do you think it was a thing that Limerick set out to go for goals straight away, or just a feel of the game and the players are so good that they could adapt within the first 2 minutes to realise there is goals here for us?
I think they probably adapted, but I think there might be a bit of the former, like that they set out to because of Cork's reputation as being dab hands at goal scoring. There certainly was an element in that we would that we would put doubts in their mind and let them see that they haven't exclusive rights to goal scoring. But look, what can be said about Cian Lynch? He was responsible for 2-4 in the first half directly. Like the 2 goals that he created were simply off the charts. Simply off the charts. But full credit as well to Gerard Hegarty for reading the situation and getting into the space. But the passes and the lead up work of Cian Lynch was just off the charts, Jack.
Yeah, I want to talk in depth about Cian Lynch in a while, because it was arguably the best performance in an Ireland final ever. But just touching on your point there, the Gerard Hegarty realised the space for his second goal and Limerick's third goal. Cian Lynch is going on the line. Mark Coleman is trying to drag him down. You can't stop Cian Lynch when he's in that form. There's no way stopping him. But Gerard Hegarty is standing on the sideline for about 5-6 seconds, completely on his own. Had Cork given up the ghost at that stage? Were Limerick just too good, or what was it like?
It was just the power of Limerick. That and Limerick they were absolutely on a roll. I think Cork at that stage were slightly mesmerised, and how Kieran Kingston must have been looking at his watch, hoping, could he get a break from it and get him in at half time and see if they could rectify something. But Limerick were on such a roll at that stage, like that, anything that Cork had tried at that point, it wasn't working. And as I say, you have to laud and salute the approach work of Cian Lynch for the 2 goals, but you also have got to laud and salute the role that Gerard Hegarty played in getting into the position. And Jack, they were both very, very clinical finishes. Patrick Collins didn't have a chance with either.
Yeah, he didn't. And in the grand, you mentioned the 318, it would have won 109 out of 139 finals. I think Limerick had 6 wides as well, if not more. Was it as close perfection as you've ever seen in a half in any game, not just to mind an All-Ireland final?
it was as close to perfection as I've seen in 75 minutes or however much Fergal Horgan played. And just mention of Fergal Horgan in case we don't get a chance again. I thought his handling of the All Ireland final was first class.
First class.
First class. And absolutely first class, and not because Limerick won. I don't think anybody could argue with the decision that he made during the game, and even late in the game there when he saw fit to book 2 players, like he did so after being absolutely certain of what happened and what was the necessary sanction to take. Full credit to the official and his team. Excellent performance. 10 out of 10 there on that one for Fergal Horgan.
But on Fergal Horgan, that's what we've come to expect from him. Like, he is head and shoulders above the rest, and it's not an insult on the other referees. It's just a compliment to Fergal. He peak of his powers. And I was listening to the Examiner podcast there, and Mark Landers, it was saying that it might be his final game. I don't know if he's an insider or not, but he'd be a big loss to the GA. But I suppose in the second half, man, and you're saying it's still a perfect performance. Like, Limerick hit a fair share wides. Like, this could have been 20, 25 points to win, really.
It could have been because I think there was a stage there, and then earlier after the second water break, that I thought Limerick seemed for briefly to take their foot off the gas, and they were just nonchalantly passing it around instead of, kind of, they were into sort of containment mode. We have it now. We'll just see it out. But look, they went again. But it could have been a greater score. It could have been a greater margin. No doubt at all about it. And of course, it's a record margin. It exceeds Kilkenny's 330 in 2008, and it exceeds Cork's 621 in 1970, and that final was an 80-minute final, so they had 10 minutes extra to amass that score. And look, you could talk about it all day, but in summary, it was a consummate performance for the ages. A performance will we ever again see? It was the performance that you would dream of. But in reality, you would think that it couldn't happen. But it unfolded in front of our eyes in Croke Park last Sunday, on the curling's biggest day, on the game's biggest stage. There can be no arguments, Jack.
Yeah, it was kind of disbelief watching it. It was sort of in awe, disbelief, joy. I don't know the emotions, and there was a Cork man sitting in front of me, like, and I actually kind of felt bad for them after a while, and I actually felt bad for the Cork players because the work rate, Matt, from the Limerick players, but like it starts in the full forward line, and Patrick Collins, I suppose, looked down the field and he saw Diarmaid Byrne, Declan Hannon, Dan Morrissey, Kyle Hayes, like, going long probably isn't really an option, and he went short to his credit. And the Cork players, who are generally very comfortable on the ball, were put under huge pressure, and there was a good few turnovers and scores for Limerick. But like, Limerick's work rate, and Tom Morrissey said it, he said the work rate comes first and the hurling follows. Like, it's incredible for 70 minutes the work that Joe O'Connor has started, and obviously Mikey Kiley has now taken to a new level. It's just incredible to watch.
Absolutely incredible. And of course, poking the ball into the same half of the field as Cian Lynch is not an option, because he's all over the place. And so, like, you're right there when you look down and you see Declan Hannon, and when you see Kyle Hayes, Dermot Burns, and William O'Donoghue and Dara Donovan sitting deep for the puck out. Like, there aren't much options. Or what do you try and do? Puck it towards Cian Lynch, Tom Morrissey, and Garrod Hegarty, who will return it with change. It's just one of those hopeless situations that you find yourself in, Jack. I'm probably carried away by it. It was only yesterday that I really began to realize what exactly we had seen, and it goes so far in atoning for 45 years of being bystanders and wondering, would we ever win an All Ireland again? But by God, this group have made up for it, Jack.
Yeah, they have, and we'll be discussing them in the context of great teams of all time. And just one thing I want to touch on is probably the full forward line, and they were afforded a lot of space. Like that's granted because Tom Morrissey and Grod Hegarty went deep, and Cork followed them, and it's probably not really wise. But I suppose before we get onto the full forward line, it's kind of a case of, I know I was talking to one of the lads in the pub later on that night. It's kind of a case of, how do you want to be killed? Do you want to follow the half forwards and let it into the full forward line and hope that the defenders can go 1-on-1, or do you let Hegarty and Morrissey go deep and they shoot from distance? Like, how do you stop them, really?
You can't. Well, I thought the full forward line were excellent, and I had serious doubts about the Cork full back line. I felt that Robert Downey had dovetailed nicely in when Damien Cahalan cried off injured against Clare, and seemingly did quite well. And like, the narrative was that he was going to be the all-star fullback, and I didn't buy into that. You will recall when we were having that chat that I couldn't. I just couldn't buy into it, because I really felt that he had not been tested, and I think that the cards fell his way against Clare, against Dublin, and against Kilkenny. But I felt that Seamus Flanagan, who was in the top of his form, 1-9 from play coming into the All-Ireland from 3 games, I'll take it from a full forward all day, every day, that he would provide a totally different challenge. And that is precisely what happened. And of course, we saw Aaron Gillan at Aaron Gillan's best. And what about Peter Casey? If there is a downer for me in this All-Ireland, and it is very, very hard to find it, it is that Peter Casey wasn't on the field for 75 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, he's an absolute joy to watch.
Oh, they're definitely a joy to watch, and all we can hope for now is that I presume most of the other senior clubs in Limerick won't want to see him for an appearance. For the neutrals, you'll be hoping that he's back for an appearance next week, and we'll be touching on that next week, that we'll be able to see all these players in their clubs again next week. There's no real break, but we're after going to
Graham Mulcahy unfortunately picked up an injury as well, Jack, and that's why he came off.
Yeah,
and you're right there about the county championship. We want to see all those heroes, and any sportsman will want to see, irrespective of club affiliations, that they'll want to see the Peter Caseys and the Graham Mulcahys participating in the club championship, because like the club championship is going to be robbed of some of its star attractions if these guys fail to make it. And I understand both of them are under pressure at this stage to participate in the early stages of the championship anyway.
Yeah, but best wishes to both. They've been two integral parts of these 3 All-Ireland successes. I have a comment in here from Liam Wolf, Matt. Is Sean Finn Limerick's best ever defender? You've seen a lot more hurling than me. I can't think of any defender from any other team that is better than Sean. What would you think of that?
I would agree with Liam. He's absolutely. I've been watching him since he was very, very, very young. He's absolutely Mr. Consistency, and you kind of a consistent defender. Playing average, but this is a defender playing at the very, very, very top level. It was a big statement from Jackie Carroll on the Sunday game earlier on this year to say that Sean Finn is currently the best defender in the game, of which, of course, I would totally agree, and probably Limerick's best defender of all time. Yeah, I couldn't argue with it.
Yeah, and 4 All-Stars in a row. Well, he hasn't got the 4th one yet, but sure. There's no one going to take that All-Star from Sean, but the consistency.
They were taking it off him. They were taking it off him a couple of weeks ago.
Well, that was just madness, and I think Sean Finn, as long as he's lining out, is an All-Star. He's just the ease at which everything he does looks. Obviously, he works tremendously hard, but I've often seen Finn run into a ruck and the ball pops up for him. The ball is just he's just a magnet to the slitter. And thank God that we have him. And as I said, he's a guaranteed All-Star. But just listen to James Cahill the other day and off the ball. He was just talking about the Limerick team in general, and he was talking about Keane Lynch and just how extraordinary he is. And I want to talk about Keane, but he was saying that for the shortlist for Hurler of the Year, there shouldn't be a shortlist. Just give it to Keane and give it to Keane for the next 2 or 3 years. Such was his performance this year. Like 6 points from play, Matt, but it was probably a tale of two halves. In the first half, playmaking, set up 2-4, put the game to bed. And then when it's dying down a bit in the second half, clips over 5 from play at his ease. Just outstanding.
But sure, look, I don't know. I'm at a loss, Jack. I have to say, and you know where I stand on Keane Lynch. I'm at a loss that people are surprised, actually, because, like, look, Jack, and I don't mind saying it. Since I was knee high to a grasshopper, I have been listening to the argument. Whether the greatest hurler of all time was Mackey or Ring. I think they've been surpassed by Lynch. That's all I can say. Because if they were better, they were supermen.
Yeah, and only 25 years of age to be proclaimed as Limerick's best ever player, but he can do it all. And he doesn't appear to be a kind of a shoot first kind of player. He seems to want to bring everyone into the game. And for anyone that watches basketball, it's kind of like the LeBron James debate that Michael Jordan was a pure scorer, whereas LeBron James is kind of as make more assists or whatever. But Lynch does it both ways, and
absolutely, Jack. You're summing it up. He's a hurling genius. Absolutely hurling genius. He has a suite of skills that every hurler in the country would die for, and he makes it look easy. But above all, Jack, Keane Lynch is the ultimate team player. Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right in your summary of him. He turned provider for the first half and turned executioner in the second half.
Yeah. You run out of superlatives to describe
absolutely. Him. I don't know where you can get in any lexicon where you can get words to adequately describe that performance. But look, that performance was on the big stage. But practically every day we're going out, we're seeing this type of performance. Like if you look back to the Munster final and Limerick in the trenches, if you look back, where did the master puppeteer that pulled all the strings? Who was it?
Yeah,
Keane Lynch.
Yeah, he's just it's been a season for the ages, a season like no other from Keane, and I suppose he doesn't stand out as much because everyone around him is so good, but I think he makes everyone else that much better, that he's so important to this team, and hopefully we won't ever have to see Limerick without him. But I'd say it would be very interesting that if he wasn't there at 11 or 8 or 9 or wherever he may be, how Limerick would operate. But Keane Lynch is definitely one of the main reasons for Limerick's change in fortunes over the last number of years. But I think this is a brilliant picture of Keane Lynch and JP McManus. Like the impact of JP on these All-Ireland successes cannot be lost, really, can they?
It can be lost, and that's an excellent photograph, and there's no one more entitled to be sharing the moment than JP McManus. And you must remember, people are saying like that JP McManus did this, that, and the other thing to win the All-Ireland finals for Limerick. JP McManus was backing and supporting Limerick long before this team emerged. He was a backer and an ardent backer of Limerick when it was, you could almost say, unfashionable to do so. So, like, there is no one more entitled to his moment in the sun. Plus, an absolute out-and-out genuine GAA man who in past existence was an officer of his club and attended county board meetings and all that sort of thing. So JP McManus's credentials to be involved with this Limerick team cannot be questioned. Absolutely. And as I said, how many years has he been involved now? He's been involved and supporting Limerick at a time when there wasn't a ghost of a chance of an All Ireland.
Yeah, richly deserved.
He was supporting Limerick when our All Ireland was to try and win the first round of the Munster Championship. So
Yeah.
people like him are entitled to bask in the sunshine because they've had many rainy days with Limerick.
Yeah, we've had many rainy days, and I think like the players obviously are an exceptional bunch, and it's from the academy and things, but the work of John Kiley and Paul Kinnerk just to take these players, and you can see it, like they're completely different players. Even from the win in 2018, they've come on so much. Like the work of Kiley and Kinnerk has just transformed these players into three-time All-Ireland winners, and there's many more to come, please God.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, we can't overstate it. You mentioned Mikey Kiley as well earlier on there, and John has publicly lauded Mikey's contribution, and rightly so, behind the scenes, and indeed the entire backroom team. But these guys are absolutely geniuses at what they do. And Jack, we've been saying it this year. And I'm firmly convinced of it, that right from the start, and we were wondering and we were worrying during the course of the league that, things weren't going as we would hope that they would be. But I was convinced all year that the plan for this year was 4 games. And that's exactly what happened. And there was measurable improvement. Now, a little fly in the ointment was, of course, the first half against Tipperary. But that was rescued. And there was measurable improvement from game to game, peaking and culminating in what we saw in Croke Park last Sunday. But these guys are geniuses. They're geniuses at what they do. They're geniuses at the level of organisation that they have behind the team, the level of coaching that's behind the team, the level of fitness preparation that is behind the team, and the way that they time to get everything spot on. Hats off to them, Jack.
Yeah. You mentioned there just about JP coming involved when Limerick really hadn't a chance to win All Ireland. They probably didn't have much chance to win a Munster Championship game. And from 2002 to 2013, Limerick had 3 championship wins, and they all came in 2007. And now we've done 9 championship games in a row and went back to back Ireland champions. Like, and it's not that long ago. Like, it's only 10, 15 years. Like, the transformation since the academy came in, like, has been huge.
Yeah, but sure. The academy was a visionary concept, and at the time of the academy, and I know there were people that opposed it for sometimes very narrow insular reasons. At the time that the academy was established, the option of doing nothing was not there, Jack. But establishing the academy, and they have been established in some other places as well, the academy is only as good as the men that are organising it and the men that are running it. The academy is a structure, but it is the way it is being run and the excellent manner in which it's been run. And that is where the success is. And that's why the academy is a success. It's driven from the top hands-on by Joe McKenna. And we've to give full credit to all these. Shane Fitzgibbon was involved in the early days of it as well. It was a visionary concept, but it's only as good as it's set up and as good as the people that are running it, and they're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, and I suppose someday we might just talk about the academy as a whole later on in the year when the club championships are over, because like it's a brilliant story, really, like and it's a huge indicator of the hard work pays off essentially. But just with 2020 or 2021, I suppose, coming to an end, like Limerick are huge favourites again for 2022. But if they are to be usurped, like what teams do you see? Like, do you think this defeat will set back Cork a number of years, or will they grow from it? Like the Galway have the talent, definitely. Tipperary will have a new manager. Waterford have Liam Cahill again. Like, there are teams, but who would be best poised to put it up to Limerick?
Jack, at this remove, I haven't given thought to be honest. At this remove, Limerick looks so far ahead of the posse that it's hard to know. I suppose an awful lot may depend on how the championship is structured next year. Will we have a similar type championship, or will we revert back to the round robin series in Munster, depending on the pandemic, I suppose. We didn't meet Clare this year.
Yeah.
I understand that Clare have given a huge vote of confidence to Brian Lohan for 3 years, I think. Peter Duggan is back on board for the coming year, which should be a big, big plus. And I honestly don't know. I wouldn't hazard a guess at this stage. I thought this year it would have been Galway. And then I thought there might have been a kick in Tipperary. None of that materialised. It's very, very, very hard to call it out there. When one team is so far ahead of the posse at this stage, it's very, very hard to know where a challenge will come from. But like if you like that, there's no doubt that the red tide is rising. Like on Sunday, they were bidding to complete a fantastic treble of minor, under 20 and senior in the not 1 year, but in the 5 days. Which means that there must be a reservoir of young talent in Cork. Like they had an exceptionally good minor team this year, but it'll take a couple of years for them to transition. I honestly don't know, Jack. I'd be poking in the dark. Absolutely, and an awful lot of water is going to go under the bridge before we'll be back in championship action again. As I said, there are too many, unknowns. I suppose the main unknown is that we don't know what the format will be. I'm not so sure that will we be back to the round robin in Munster again. I don't know. How are we going to? What is going to be the situation with the split season? Like there are a lot of big decisions facing the GA in the aftermath of this COVID pandemic. That's if we're ever going to get out of it.
Yeah, I think we'll be back to the round robin, but I suppose it remains to be seen. There's a comment in here from Jewel Lee Mack. Was it your birthday at the weekend, Matt?
It was my birthday on Sunday.
Oh, I didn't know. Happy birthday to you, Matt.
Thanks, Julia.
A great birthday present it was.
Thank you.
It was the best birthday present you ever got, was it?
Well, it was. It bettered the one I got in 2018, because 2018 was the night that John Kiley came home to Galway after winning the 2018 All Ireland. I was doing MC that night in the stage in Galway, and the entire panel were there. And John Kiley, however, he found out, discovered it was my birthday, and he serenaded. And he's not a bad singer now. No. He serenaded "Happy Birthday" to me.
Yeah, you mentioned John Kiley as a singer. I'll never forget him singing "Piano Man" in the Gaelic grounds in 2018. Do you think we'll have a homecoming of some sort later on in the year, maybe?
Yeah, well, the mayor is on public record during the week lamenting the fact that due to the COVID restrictions that we couldn't have a homecoming that would be fit this team. But he gave a promise, subject to the lifting of restrictions and subject to whatever the public health guidelines are at the time, that he, in his capacity as the city and county's first citizen, will be hoping to organise something. But that's as far as he can go at this stage with public health guidelines and anything. But any kudos that are showered or directed in this group's way, and I'm talking from John Kiley down to the 36th man in the squad, is fully deserved, and they deserve every bit of it, Jack.
Yeah, and you're talking about them deserving it. Like it, I think the players themselves deserve it, but the people of Limerick probably deserve it to give back because, as you mentioned so already so far, the players have given so much joy and hope to these people or to the people of Limerick during this troublesome time. But talking about deserving things, the All Stars will probably debate will rage on for maybe a week or so now, and it'll go on the back burner while the club championship's on. So we might touch on it briefly. The Sunday game team of the year had 11 Limerick men on it. Now 9 is the record. We got 9 last year. Like there is a genuine case for the 15 Limerick players. There's no doubt about that, is there?
Jack, I don't know. Your boss Raf accused me of having green mist in my eyes. We saw such a performance in Croke Park last Sunday, and I don't apologise to anybody anywhere for saying this. There was a compelling case for the 15 Limerick players to be named in the team of the year.
Yeah.
That was the consummate performance. That is the type of performance that you would like all young players and young kids starting off down at under 6 to aspire to. Like there wasn't a dirty stroke in the game. It was a fabulous game of hurling, and full credit to Cork. Cork will always play hurling, and it's the way they like to play it. And but there was a compelling case for all 15. All right. There were arguments against, we'll say, there were arguments in favour of people instead of Nicky Quaid, Dan Morrissey, Gerard Hegarty, and Darragh Donovan. But I didn't hear any argument as to why they shouldn't be in it, because I can give them plenty arguments as to why they should. And I think anyone that was watching last Sunday, you start with Nicky Quaid, and no apologies to the woman that texted us in last week. Now, when are we going to stop talking about Nicky Quaid? We're not. How could you make a case? I ask you, how could you make a case against Nicky Quaid not being goalkeeper of the year? Come on, Jack.
Yeah, that's one I couldn't understand. Owen Murphy made a couple of saves against Cork. Like, in fairness to him, and Owen Murphy probably is one of the best goalies of all time, if not the best. But Nicky Quaid, like I'm laughing because it's kind of farcical to say that he wouldn't be the all-star goalie. Like, he doesn't have to make as many saves. That's fair because Limerick defense is so good. When he needed to against Waterford, he made those saves. But like the puck outs, he's probably Limerick's best distributor of the ball from goals. He sets up so many attacks. Like, you could not have him in the team of the year. And that was one thing that I definitely stood out from the Sunday game team of the year straight away. I was like how we don't have Nicky Quaid with Brendan Cummins on the panel. I don't know.
I don't get it. He saved Patrick Horgan's penalty.
Yeah. Like, that's a turning point in the year because Cork would have went 5 ahead. Like, it seemed to take the wind out of the sails. Like, little moments, but
I'm laughing to myself because it's so farcical. This is comic book stuff. Like, I just don't get it. I just don't get it, Jack.
Yeah, well, Nicky Quaid deserves it, and I hope by the time the dust settles that the context of Nicky Quaid and how important he is to this Limerick team will be noticed by those picking it. But you make a case for all 15 Limerick players. Like, who's guaranteed on the Limerick team to get an All-Star? Like, who is without a shot? Like, we mentioned Sean Finn earlier, Keane Lynch. Who else is guaranteed one?
Oh, Sean Finn, we said, didn't we?
Yeah.
I see Tim Hanley's texting is in there that he couldn't agree more on Nicky Quaid.
Yeah, he's a club mate of mine. Shout out to Timmy Hanley this morning. Up right near there, I presume.
Well, you have a beauty as a club mate, Tim. But well said there anyway on that one. Like, Sean, look, go through them 1 to 15. Like, who can you make a case for against them?
Well, if you're making a case,
are we kind of crystal balling as to who might get them, or are we saying who should get him? There's a big difference, and I believe there's a small bit of politicking going on in these All Stars, because some of them I don't get it from time to time. Now, we got it fairly accurately last year, Jack.
Mm.
But which are we doing? Are we saying who should get him, or are we saying who do we think they'll give him to?
I'd say who, like, I think it's, I don't think you can give it 15 Limerick players. Like, I just don't think, it's fair, first of all, because, like, the team is so good. I think if you put a lot of players into the Limerick setup, that they would flourish. Now, not to the same extent that the Limerick players are. They're obviously that bit better. But I think, would say Jack O'Connor, for example, I think quite in the final, but is picked up by Sean Finn. God, he was excellent against Kilkenny. He was good in all their other games. Like, I think he deserves an All-Star, because I think if you put him into the Limerick team, he'd be have an All-Ireland medal anyways, and probably more scores. I think, like, the likes of Conor Prunty deserves a shout out. Callum Lyons was good all year. Tony Kelly and Colin Malone from Clare. Like, I think you could make a case for the 15 Limerick, but I don't think you can, because I think you have to contextualise and see Conor Prunty versus Dan Morrissey, for example. Dan Morrissey, I don't think, did anyone score off him this year? Did anyone even attempt to take him on? Did they ever really win it in front of Dan? But Conor Prunty, maybe.
They're talking about Dan Morrissey, and I thought Dan Morrissey, when he played in the league, wasn't the Dan Morrissey that we had seen last year, but like Dan Morrissey through the league and in the early stages of the championship was trying to shake off one of those injuries that's hard to shake off. But by God, in Limerick's moment of crisis, when Dan Morrissey was called into the fray in the Munster final, we saw what Dan Morrissey could do. We saw what he could do in the semi-final. We saw what he did last Sunday.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone can make a case, for Conor Prunty. You're a Conor Prunty fan.
I am, and you're the opposite.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm the opposite, but I'm a pragmatist, and I think that it's Dan Morrissey all day for me.
Yeah, I would make the case for Conor Prunty, because I think it's kind of you're trying to pick players from Limerick that not necessarily don't deserve it, but, like, I think the fact that Dan Morrissey doesn't start the first two games would count against him. And I think that Barry Nash has to get one this year, because he missed out last year, rightly or wrongly. He was thereabouts. And I think Kyle Hayes, Declan Hannon, and Darren Burns are also all nailed on. So I don't think you're going to give the 6 to Limerick. So I think Conor Prunty is the next best defender, I thought, all year. Tim O'Mahony coming into the final was very quiet in the final, whereas Conor Prunty was decent in all his games. But I don't think you can give the first 7 All-Stars to Limerick players. I think they all deserve them, but that's probably why I would put Conor Prunty in there, just to change up the colour, if anything. But I think, first and foremost, Barry Nash, All-Star this year. And to come from...
We're not in aesthetics now, Jack, of colour or any of that kind of stuff.
I know, yeah, but on Barry, like, 2015, corner forward, man the match. Probably it was centre forward for the minor teams. And in 2013, it was his score that was chalked off. But I think he has to get, like, the transition to cornerback, which is such a specialised position, like, to do with such ease. Like, he's nailed on, I think, for the number 4 jersey. You're
talking there now for 2 minutes about Barry Nash, Jack, and I agree 100% with you, 150% with you. Absolutely nailed on, no question about it. I think. Who is that even a challenger? In the early days of the All Stars, when they were picked in positions rather than picked in backs, midfield, and forwards, there was the odd occasion where there was an unchallenged position, just one nominee. Like, and he he you know, he'd been that category nearly. Absolutely outstanding. I see Mike Condon tells us that Tony Kelly deserves an All-Star. We'll be coming to him in a minute. But um, the transition of Barry Nash has been phenomenal. Like from a forward, and people were, when he was named at halfback, people were asking, does John Kiley realise what he's doing? You can be sure that John Kiley realises what he's doing. Like, he started at halfback, and we know how he became a cornerback in Limerick's crisis in the first round of the Munster Championship last year when Mikey Casey and Richie English were out. He dovetailed back into it. And like, he has grown game on game on game. He had a bit of difficulty for the first 15 minutes against Clare on his debut at cornerback. And you know, that's as much as trouble that he has experienced. You know, he's like as if he grew up a cornerback.
Yeah.
But Jack, he hasn't forgotten his forward instincts, as
No,
we saw
definitely.
before half time on Sunday. He knows where the sticks are.
No, he does. He's just a brilliant player, and it's something someone mentioned, that all those Limerick players, that a lot of them have transitioned to the back. And another one that I'm going to mention now is Declan Hannon, that like you can see the forward instinct in him, but like he scored 2 points from play. He seems to do that in All-Ireland finals against Joe Canning 3 years ago. He was nominated for man of the match. He was nominated for man of the match at the weekend. But the one thing that stuck out for me from Declan Hannon, I think I saw it somewhere else, was in 2013 he probably had his lowest moment in a Limerick jersey. Was he 20 at the time, 21 maybe, to be on the freeze in an All-Ireland semi-final? The weight of expectation that was on him didn't go to plan for him that day. And since then, like a year later, he scored 5 from play at wing forward against Kilkenny. That's forgotten about because Limerick lost. But the way he has responded in Crow Park days, magnificent against Waterford, real against Cork at the weekend. Like, Declan Hannon is a shoe-in for his second All-Star at centre-back, and there's no centre-back that can live with him.
Well, I would say magnificent every day. I wouldn't just say magnificent against Waterford. I would say an absolute cornerstone of the Limerick team. And I've said umpteen times, and I'll say it again, at the risk of being repetitive and boring, that he does things and make them look so simple that ordinary players struggle to do, and he makes it just look natural, and it goes under the radar. But Jack, his leadership on the field is absolutely phenomenal. Like, with Declan Hannon, you get the complete package: the outstanding hurler, outstanding centre-back, and a born leader, all rolled into one. It was an inspired choice to name him as captain.
Yeah, it was inspired.
And just getting back to the All-Ireland final again. And Patrick Horgan was the Cork captain. And I would criticise him for this. Like, they got 3 or 4 frees, close-in frees, late in the game. The game was practically over. Why didn't he try and go for a goal? Nonchalantly walked up, tapped it over the bar. What was the point of that?
I don't know, probably put more respectability in the scoreline. I don't know. I think, like, as you said, the game was over at that stage. But on Declan Hannon again, he's the first man since Christy Ring to collect 3 All-Ireland medals as captain. Like, anytime you're compared to Christy Ring, you mentioned Keane Lynch in the same bracket as him. Like, you're doing something right. You're doing something special, something unique.
Absolutely.
Moving on in the team, Luke Toomey says that it seems like all Limerick from this chat. I suppose it is a Limerick based podcast, but like when you win All Ireland final by 16 points, it's hard to look past Limerick, really. Like, but probably are a bit biased. Moving into midfield, Darragh Donovan, I think, is going to miss out. I don't think he deserves to miss out. I think he'll just wait falls, but it'll be William O'Donoghue's first All-Star, an enforcer like no other in the game. And you might want to talk about Darragh Donovan first, but like, the two of them dovetail so well together.
Absolutely, they are the perfect match, and like we're bisecting the team now, and tis when you bisect it in this manner that you see how every single element of the team that John has built, let's say, and John and his backroom team have built, how they all function and function to such a high level. Darragh Donovan, of course, he's totally consistent, and in that, he's, what should I put it? His use of the ball has always been one of his strengths, and has been very good. Chips in with a few scores, and he has formed this partnership now with with Willem O'Donoghue, and you can see the way they're able to negate some of the big names of the game, like, because some of the influencers of the game, like Jamie Bannon, was key, absolutely key to Waterford's chances. Now, he's played against Willem O'Donoghue 3 or 4 times and hasn't been allowed impact in the game. We saw something similar with this duo of Willem O'Donoghue and Darragh Donovan last week, where and I have great time for him as a hurler, and that's Darragh Fitzgibbon. It's well documented. I think he's an excellent hurler, but he wasn't allowed to put his stamp on the game at all last Sunday. So that's full credit to him. Now, if you ask me, should the two of them be in, I say yes. If you ask me, will the two of them be in, I'll say no, because I'm just crystal ball gazing into what might happen, and I think Willem O'Donoghue and Tony Kelly will probably be the midfield pairing.
Yeah, I think Tony Kelly will go into midfield, and I think for Cork's point of view, that Patrick Horgan and Jack O'Connor probably deserve to make the team, and so does Tony Kelly. So you shoehorn him into the midfield. It's the easier choice, I suppose. When you have so many Limerick players, they're not going to give out as much. If you had 15 Limerick players, you'd have people giving out from all over the country. If you've 12, 13, it's easier to accept if one or two don't make it. We just said that. But I think Jack O'Connor deserves it over Patrick Horgan. If you are going to get a Cork man in there, two of them maybe deserve it. I think from Limerick, Cian Lynch is hurler of the year. I don't even know if there's any point discussing that.
No.
Tom Morrissey deserves an All-Star, definitely. Flanagan and Casey do. And I think probably the two Limerick forwards that I'd leave out, if I had to leave them out, is Garrod Hegarty and Aaron Gillan, which sounds mad. But Garrod Hegarty was hurler of the year last year. He hasn't hit them same heights. On All-Ireland final day, he did, 2-2 from play. Aaron Gillan hasn't hit the heights of 2019 when he was, I think, hurler of the year up until Limerick were knocked out. I think if he gets an All-Ireland final, he's hurler of the year. So for that reason, I think it's easier to leave them out and probably put in a Jack O'Connor or even a Tony Kelly or a Patrick Horgan. What would your thinking be on the forwards?
Yeah, as I say, we're crystal ball. We're guessing as to what might happen, and I think you're possibly on the right lines there. But do we look outside Cork and Limerick? Like a case could be made possibly for Jason Ford. I think despite Galway's travails, I was impressed with both Conor Whelan and Concannon.
Yeah.
There's this O'Connor in Wexford, Rory O'Connor. This lad David Burke in Dublin. There can be cases made. Certainly, I agree with your analysis about Jack O'Connor. To me, Jack O'Connor up to the All-Ireland final was a sensation. It's hard to leave him out, but we've seen in the past how much a part a performance in an All-Ireland final means when it comes to the selection of the All-Stars. That is the unfortunate thing against, and I think that is something that might militate against Jack O'Connor. I'm a fan of Jack O'Connor's, and I think, like, in one of Cork's darkest hours, which was last Sunday, I think one man shone like a beacon as well. And it wasn't easy. and that's Seamus Hannity.
Yeah, 4 points from play. Class.
I thought Seamus Hannity, something about Seamus Hannity that, to me, I've the utmost admiration for the guy. Great player, absolutely fantastic player. And I think last Sunday, you had quality performances all over the place from men in green. But if you wanted a quality performance from with Cork and in the trenches, it came from Seamus Hannity. I thought he was outstanding last Sunday. I think a shout out can be made for him.
Yeah, he's been good this year.
Maybe he had a great final, decent enough semi-final. Didn't have a great game against Limerick, maybe in the Munster Championship, but like Seamus Hannity is a key player. He's one of the 2 survivors that Cork had from the 2013 All-Ireland final. He's been around, given great service. I certainly think he should come into the mix.
Yeah, I think a lot of them Cork players will get nominations, and rightly so. But
we're forgetting TJ Reid.
Yeah, if I was, to be honest now, Matt, if I was plucking a forward from Kilkenny, it'd be Owen Cody.
Owen Cody has been very, very good.
Yeah.
So we are kind of limiting it to Cork and Limerick, but I think it'll be broadened much wider. Certainly the nominations will be broadened much wider, but we're trying to second guess what to say. Look, we're confused, Jack. You and I are confused at the one time.
Doesn't like us.
Between what we think should be the team and what we think will be the team.
Well, I think what should be the team is probably 12 to 13 Limerick players. I'd say they'll break the record. I think they'll get 10 maybe or 11. But this is for later on the line. When the dust settles and people have the chance to watch over games, you might appreciate other players more. Like, it's all Limerick now, and rightly so, as we mentioned before. And we've gone over the hour now, and we were going to talk in depth about Limerick versus Kilkenny of the 08 team, and we'll chat a bit about it. But we'll talk about it more later on in the year. But like this, the barometer was Kilkenny 08 against Waterford, a 23-point win. They put 330 on the board. Limerick surpassed that 330 score. They got 332. Now, the margin of victory was less. Cork scored 122. But just on face value, Matt, where does this Limerick team compare with the 08 Kilkenny team?
They compare very favourably, because the first point I would make is that Cork were a better team in 2021 than Waterford were in 2008. That's the first point I would make. I think I think they compare very, very favourably. Now, there are a lot of huge names. Absolutely. Some of the real great names, not just of Kilkenny hurling, but of hurling. Like when you look at Michael Kavanagh, you look at Noel Hickey, look at JJ Delaney, look at Owen Larkin, Eddie Brennan, Henry Shefflin. Absolutely names that roll off the tongue. And if you look at the Kilkenny bench back then, you had fellas like James McGarry on it. You had John Tennyson, Michael Fennelly, Michael Rice, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid. That was a multi-talented squad.
Yeah.
And look, you'd need considerable time, and you would need to make the comparison would be to assess the number one with the number ones, the number twos with the number twos, and the number threes with the number threes, and so on. But time doesn't permit us to do that.
No, but I will. Anyway. Around Christmas time, we can do another special. But yeah, they compare extremely favorably, and I think probably the biggest common denominator is that last name, Brian Cody and John Kiley. Like, they're John Kiley is as close to Brian Cody as you're going to get in terms of I think the Limerick players would do anything for John Kiley.
Absolutely, sure. You know, the record is there. He's a 4-time All-Ireland winning manager. There are few that can have that on their CV. Like he did it at under 21, and he oversaw the transition to senior. And mind you, I said before, I remember at the presentation of the All-Ireland medals in 2015, John Kiley was at pains to tell anyone that was prepared to listen to him at that particular function that it was going to be a 3-year project to win a senior. He was spot on.
He's rarely wrong, is John, if ever. It's just
never wrong, Jack.
We're just blessed, Matt, really, to be witnessing this.
Absolutely. Look, we're pinching ourselves. We're black from pinching ourselves because it's just incredible to believe that we have seen this transformation. Like, and we look back in awe on I remember the 1990s. We lost 2 All-Ireland finals, and I mean lost. Big LOST. Like, will we ever forget the way we succumbed to Offaly and succumbed to a 14-man Wexford? You know, we lost All-Irelands, and we were looking on at all with Clare and Offaly winning All-Irelands. We were saying to ourselves, my God, we are a hurling county and we can't do it. What's wrong? You know, and it has taken almost a quarter of a century since to get it right. And certainly when we got it right, we got it really right. Because we could have been completing 4 in a row with a bit of luck.
Yeah.
You know, even though that Tom Morrissey argued after the match on Sunday, like when he was asked the question that Limerick weren't good enough on the day, full stop. And I agree with him to a point in that it shouldn't have come down to that last decision. Limerick had enough of opportunities to have the game put to bed before that. And just probably and John Kiley was of the same mind, weren't on the day. So, like, what has been achieved has been phenomenal. And, like, the prospects for the future, Jack, are huge. When you see 19-year-old Colin Coughlin coming on there, you know, this is the future. You know, you've Cathal O'Neill waiting at the wings. You've Adam English waiting at the wings. Aidan O'Connor waiting at the wings. All these sort of fellas waiting, and there's going to be a spring in their step. They will be saying to themselves, by God, we're going to get in and get part of this slice of this action.
Yeah, just on the under 20s there, you mentioned obviously Cork won. You mentioned Cork won the under 20s and minor All Ireland. Like, Cork, this under 20s Cork team is being lauded as one of the best ever. Like, Limerick put them up to this year in under 20s. Like, Cork were the better team on the day, there's no doubt about it. But Limerick were right with them. So
they were right with him and could actually have stolen it right at the finish. And it would have been a steal, in fairness, because Cork were dominant for long periods. And it is a very, very good Cork team. But the trick is now, how many of them, and when will they make the transition to senior?
Yeah.
I think what's required in Cork now, Cork got on a bit of a roller coaster this year with won the late 2020 under 20 final after 22 years, and the minors were going well. I think it was as clear as daylight from the time the first ball was poked in the Munster Championship that Cork would not only win the Munster Minor Championship, but that they'd win the All-Ireland, and that's the first All-Ireland after 20 years. So Cork got on a bit of a roll, you know, but it's hard to know now. It's hard to know what the impact of last Sunday's defeat will have on the Cork hurling psyche. That is the big question, because there's no doubt that there are an awful lot of very, very exciting young players coming through in Cork. And does it call the question for Kieran Kingston, if he stays in situ, and whoever the Cork manager is, do they go for massive surgery from day one? Put him in and leave him in. You know, move out a share of the old guard and bring in these new young guns, because there are certainly some very, very exciting players in that under-20 side. There's no doubt about it. And very, very exciting players, Jack, in the minor team. So there are 2 cohorts of very, very good players coming in Cork. But the trick is, and Galway will vouch for this, underage success it doesn't guarantee you anything.
No, it definitely doesn't.
Galway, we're all the time talking about Galway minors and the success they have. They've won 6 All-Ireland minor titles since 2011. And we're wondering why they're not transitioning to senior. I can tell you to a certain degree why they're not transitioning to senior. Because they're not even transitioning to under-20 and under-21. So it's there that the logjam is, that they're not just striving on from minor to the next level. So Cork have to be careful. Their situation has to be managed. They have a lot of young players coming. There are big decisions to be made, and something that is in scarce supply in Cork when it comes to chasing the Liam McCarthy Cup, and that is patience. This needs to be patiently handled, and certainly Cork will be back, but will they be back in 2022? I'm not so sure.
No, Cork, they're definitely a coming team, but the here and now is Limerick. Limerick have arrived. They've arrived for the last few years, and they show no signs of slowing down. I think we'll leave it there, Matt. An hour and 11 minutes. Look, you could talk all day about this Limerick team, these Limerick players. You could give an hour to each individual on that team, the management team, everything. It's just run so well. It's brilliant to watch. It has made our year so far. We're already looking forward to seeing them back in action. But it was pretty much the perfect season, 2nd year in a row. We won't be finished with it yet. We'll be looking at All-Stars later on in the year. We'll probably look at that Kilkenny team when the dust settles. There's so much to talk about yet. But I suppose I want to finish here with a clip, and it'll be over then. But I was just putting a promo together for the Winnicouga and all the details behind it, and just the camaraderie and the friendship and just the crack these players seem to have at training. It just bring a smile, brought a smile to my face. They're a real team. There's a real bond. Keane Lynch said we die for each other. And I think there and then lies the essence of this team, that they do anything for each other and the management team. So I'll leave you with that short clip for the Winnicouga.
Bringing a smile to the broadcaster with a permanent smile.
Yeah, they're just brilliant to watch, Matt. They're a credit to their families, to Limerick, to everything. So that does it for me and Matt today. We'll be back later on to preview this weekend's senior football action. Next week, we'll be looking forward to the return of the hurling, and there's plenty more to come. But for now, many thanks for joining in, and we'll chat again soon. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome, Jack.
Not used to it automatics, like. Here we have this beautiful car. You have a chance of winning at www.winnicouga.ie for €20, and your support is much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah. Like an old farmer.
No, Dave, you just lie across the planet, you know.
Yeah, will you? Top on or off?
Pitch up the shots a bit, you know.
You're right, man.
Can't move.
Nice car for you to win now.
Be lovely. Super Grady. Oh, I take it.
Accuracy is a bit.
It's off, is it?
Yeah.
Your hips going that way and your face this way.
Oh, you see them. You see them. Oh my good God.
Why did you just say that?
They do up though there.
Oh man.